Greta Thunberg and her flotilla comrades refused to watch the videos of Hamas's atrocities on October 7th. Well, what does this say about their protest? Dominique Hoffman of the Philos Project joins us now. So Dominique, what does this say about Greta?
Well, thank you for having me. And I think this really exemplifies that the Freedom Flotilla, as it has been called, was on a journey to first make a political statement about Israel. I don't think this flotilla ever expected to actually reach Gaza. They were waiting for that publicity stunt, that moment to then turn to the world and claim that they were kidnapped by Israel. And I think it highlights the political narcissism and the performative activism that has really swept the West over the last many years, but is really at the corner of this social justice movement that Greta Thunberg is really the head of.
You know, I'm going to say a little statement that might come across as harsh, but let me preface with this. I am a hypocrite. I have no judgment to lay on anyone else's plate because I know myself. I'm flawed. I'm a sinful man, and I'm a hypocrite. That being said, this to me, Greta, I know you're only 22, and if you're watching this, again, it's not because I come from a place of judgment, but you have made a name for basically shaming people for not paying attention to climate change, right? That's why you're famous. And yet, in this moment, this apex moment of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that you've inserted yourself in, you refuse to look at the evidence yourself. So to me, you have officially transitioned from a climate activist to a hypocrisy activist. So you've lost all credibility with me. I think you have done yourself an immense disservice because if you're not even willing to watch what happened, you're not a balanced activist. You are, as you said, you're just hypocritical. You preach all these things that you're not going to do yourself. And again, when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I've intentionally immersed myself in both sides. I've been to the Palestinian territories in Israel over 30 times. I have friends on both sides. I want to know the truth that, find out what's actually happening. And I don't think you do, Greta, and you just showed that to the entire planet. So Dominique, what do you hope people take away from this whole flotilla Gaza thing? How can people actually genuinely help the Palestinian civilians that are in Gaza? Where should people turn to?
Well, first, as Christians, I think prayer is an incredible place to start. I think over the last year and a half, we've really seen the spiritual dimensions of this conflict with misinformation being spread. And this is also, a conflict and a spiritual battle between faith and then, secular ideologies such as critical theory, which Greta Thunberg is really at the head of. And we've seen that woke ideology on the left spread across our college campuses in the United States as well. And they'll talk about the Palestinian people, but the Palestinians really represent this idea of liberation for their own cause. So Greta Thunberg with social justice, she views the world through an oppressor-oppressed paradigm in the same way that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been framed. So really the idea of the Palestinians is what she's interested in, not the actual well-being of the Palestinian people. And so beyond prayer, I think looking to legitimate aid channels, that's something that the Israeli government pointed out, that the flotilla was not a legitimate form of aid. Again, going back to this being largely performative, there was a very small amount of aid on that flotilla. Whatever was not consumed or used by the 12 activists on their journey across the Mediterranean would not have been enough to sustain even a few families in Gaza. So there are legitimate channels. There are new legitimate channels that are alternatives to the UN. And I think that also brings up a great point, is that the international community has been outraged by the new privatization of aid distribution in Gaza because it's different than the status quo UN distribution. But we know that more than 60% of that aid over the last year and a half given to Palestinians hasn't even made it to the Palestinian people. And so we have the woke left, we have international institutions who purport to be pro-Palestinian, but the channels that they seek to achieve that with have also exploited the Palestinians they claim to be interested in their well-being.
That is a very helpful point that you've pointed out, and it's one of those things that most people just don't even know that statistic. So, in closing, Dominique, you have a podcast. You've dedicated your professional life to unpacking this whole situation, and people feel so confused because on one news site it says Israel is basically vampires sucking the blood of Palestinian people, and on the other side it's like, hey, everything's fine, there's nothing to look at here. It's just a bunch of terrorists that are doing this stuff, and there's almost a desensitizing of, hey, there are hurting people in Gaza. So where's the truth? Where should people go to find out what's really happening? And as you mentioned, prayer is the place that I personally start. But for my friend here who's watching, and maybe Greta, if you're watching, we're praying for you. I know this sounds like a diss. It's not. It's genuinely us, I think, hoping to allow you to just have eyes to see that you're being used, and it's unhelpful and counterproductive. But anyway, where should people go to when they want to at least try to have a nuanced, balanced perspective of the Holy Land conflict?
First, I would point to TPS-IL, that is Israel's news agency, essentially a syndicate, kind of like our AP here in the West. And they do a lot of on-the-ground reporting. It's not biased. It's not spin. It's not even journalism. They're just accounting what's happening on the ground. So that's always a really reliable source that I go to. I think a lot of what you're saying, this noise surrounding the conflict, can be sifted through if you just go to look at what's actually happening on the ground. And of course, it's politicized on both sides of the political aisle. So that's incredibly dangerous. I also go to the Times of Israel. They are often a very unbiased platform. But I do read both sides of the political aisle. I'll go to CNN and I'll also go to Fox News and try and sift out the truth in between both of those news outlets. The Fearless Project, the nonprofit that I work for, also does a lot of unbiased reporting on the ground and analysis. And so I would turn to some of those. But TPS-IL is a really great unbiased news source that I encourage everyone to visit.
Well, Dominique, I appreciate your perspective and your wisdom. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.